I never expected that night to be anything more than a routine walk home. It was late, past midnight, and the streets were almost deserted, save for the occasional flickering streetlight and the distant hum of a passing car. I had just finished my shift at the diner, exhausted and eager to collapse into bed. My apartment was only a few blocks away, and the shortcut through the alley behind the old bookstore had always saved me a few minutes. I had walked that path 100 times before, never once considering that this time would be different. That this time, I would see something I was never meant to see. The moment I turned into the alley, my breath caught in my throat. There, under the pale glow of a broken street lamp, stood two figures, a man and a woman. At first it seemed like a normal argument, heated but nothing unusual. But then I saw the knife. I froze, my body screaming for me to turn around, to leave, to pretend I hadn't seen anything. But my feet wouldn't move. The man's voice was low and threatening, while the woman's was desperate, pleading. My heart pounded as I saw him raise his hand. A second later, a glint of metal caught the light, and she collapsed to the ground. I wanted to scream, to run, to do anything, but I just stood there, paralyzed. The man looked around, his eyes scanning the alley as if sensing he was being watched. I pressed myself against the wall, willing myself to disappear. After what felt like an eternity, he took one last glance at the lifeless body before disappearing into the shadows. I remained rooted in place, my breath shallow, my mind racing. What had I just witnessed? And more importantly, what was I supposed to do now? I don't remember walking home that night. One moment I was in that alley, and the next I was standing in my apartment, staring at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. My hands were shaking, my shirt damp with sweat. My mind replayed the scene over and over, dissecting every detail. The way the woman's body crumpled, the way the man's face remained disturbingly calm. I had just witnessed a murder. I knew I should call the police, report what I had seen. But the moment I picked up my phone, doubt crept in. What if the killer had seen me? What if he knew where I lived? My mind spiraled with fear. The thought of being dragged into an investigation, of being hunted by a man who had killed without hesitation, sent a shiver down my spine. I put the phone down. Sleep never came that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, her silent plea for help, her body lying motionless on the pavement. I imagined her family, waiting for her to come home, unaware that she never would. Guilt clawed at my chest, but fear held it at bay. Morning arrived, and with it, an overwhelming sense of dread. As I made my way to work, every passerby felt like a threat. Every car that slowed down made my stomach twist. I kept expecting to see his face in the crowd, watching me, waiting. The weight of what I had seen was suffocating, yet I remained silent. Maybe it was cowardice, or maybe it was self-preservation. Either way, I knew I had made my choice. Sleep never came that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, her silent plea for help, her body lying motionless on the pavement. I imagined her family, waiting for her to come home, unaware that she never would. Guilt clawed at my chest, but fear held it at bay. Morning arrived, and with it, an overwhelming sense of dread. As I made my way to work, every passerby felt like a threat. Every car that slowed down made my stomach twist. I kept expecting to see his face in the crowd, watching me, waiting. The weight of what I had seen was suffocating, yet I remained silent. Maybe it was cowardice, or maybe it was self-preservation. Either way, I knew I had made my choice. I kept my head down, avoiding eye contact with my coworkers. My boss walked past, grumbling about how unsafe the city had become, and I just nodded, pretending to be as clueless as everyone else. Every second that passed felt like a ticking bomb. What if someone had seen me that night? What if the killer had followed me home? I thought about the woman's family again, about the justice she deserved. But fear still gripped me tighter than my guilt. If I came forward, my life would never be the same. That night, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Every shadow stretched too long, every footstep behind me made my skin crawl. I told myself I was just being paranoid, that the fear was messing with my head. But then I saw it, a figure standing across the street from my apartment building. He was barely visible, cloaked in the darkness, but I knew he was there. My breath hitched. Was it him? Had he found me? I backed away from the window, my pulse pounding in my ears. I stayed up the entire night, jumping at every sound. I thought about calling the police then, telling them everything, but the fear of retaliation was too strong. What if he wasn't alone? What if coming forward put my life in danger? My apartment felt smaller with each passing hour, the walls closing in on me. I kept replaying the moment in the alley, wondering if I had been seen, if I had made a mistake that night. Sleep never came. I just sat there, trapped in my own silence. By the third day, I couldn't take it anymore. My hands shook as I dialed the police station's number, my thumb hovering over the call button. I wanted to do the right thing. I wanted to tell them everything. But just as I was about to press it, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. My breath hitched. Slowly, I answered. A low voice whispered on the other end, "Stay quiet. Forget what you saw." My blood ran cold. The line went dead. I dropped the phone, my heart hammering. He knew. He knew I had seen him. The fear that had been gnawing at me exploded into full-blown panic. I locked every door, every window, my mind racing through every possibility. If he could call me, he could find me. And if I didn't listen to him, I didn't want to think about what would happen next. Days passed, and my paranoia only grew. Every time I stepped outside, I felt eyes on me. I started avoiding my usual routines, taking different routes home, switching shifts at work. But no matter what I did, the fear never left me. I wasn't just scared of him anymore. I was scared of myself, of what keeping this secret was doing to me. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I had become a prisoner of my own mind. One night, I found myself standing in front of the police station. I had walked there without even realizing it. My feet had made the decision for me. All I had to do was step inside. But my hands refused to push the door open. I imagined the headlines, the investigations, the questions. I imagined him watching me, knowing I had betrayed him. My chest tightened. My body turned on its own. I walked away, once again choosing silence over justice. Sleep became my enemy. Every time I closed my eyes, she was there, the woman from the alley. At first, she was just a shadow in my dreams, lingering at the edge of my vision. But then she started speaking, her voice barely above a whisper, yet it echoed in my head like a scream. "Why didn't you help me?" I'd jolt awake, my skin slick with sweat, my breath ragged. The room always felt colder after those dreams, as if she had been there, watching me. One night I saw her more clearly than ever before. She stood at the foot of my bed, her face obscured by darkness, but I knew it was her. Her fingers twitched as if reaching for me, her breath shallow and ragged. I tried to move, to run, to scream, but my body wouldn't respond. I was paralyzed in terror. Then, just as suddenly as she appeared, she was gone. But the fear remained, pressing down on my chest like an unbearable weight. The next morning, I couldn't take it anymore. The fear, the guilt, the nightmares. I had to tell someone. I met up with my friend Jason at a coffee shop, choosing a corner table where no one could hear us. My hands were clammy as I stirred my untouched coffee. "Jason, if you saw something bad happen, but you knew talking about it could put you in danger, what would you do?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He laughed at first, thinking I was joking, but when he saw the look in my eyes, his smile faded. "What the hell did you see?" he asked, his tone suddenly serious. I hesitated. My lips parted, ready to spill everything, but then I saw it. A man in a black hoodie sitting a few tables away, staring right at me. My stomach turned to ice. I swallowed hard, forcing a smile. Forget it, it was just a stupid dream. Jason didn't believe me, but I didn't care. I couldn't say anything. I had already said too much. That night, my phone rang again. My stomach clenched as I saw the unknown number flashing on the screen. My hands shook as I picked it up, pressing it to my ear. Silence. But then, breathing, slow, deliberate, the kind of breathing that wasn't accidental, the kind that was meant to be heard. I couldn't move. I couldn't even hang up. The line stayed open, the breathing continuing in steady, chilling waves. Then, just before the call ended, a single whispered word cut through the silence. "Run." The line went dead. My phone slipped from my hand and hit the floor with a soft thud. My chest rose and fell in rapid bursts. He wasn't just watching me, he was playing with me.
The following week, I avoided the news. I couldn't bear to see her face or hear about the case. But then, while walking past a convenience store, I saw the headline, "Suspect Still at Large." My legs felt weak as I picked up the newspaper, scanning the article. No arrests, no leads, just a city growing more terrified by the day. I felt sick. My silence had kept a killer free. A woman was dead and I had done nothing. I clenched my fists, the paper crumpling beneath my grip. This wasn't just about me anymore. I had convinced myself that staying quiet was for my own safety, but at what cost? If he did it once, he would do it again. And if that happened, her blood would be on my hands too. I tried to disappear into my routine, convincing myself I was safe. But then, on an ordinary afternoon, I saw him. I was at the grocery store, reaching for a carton of milk when my fingers froze. Across the aisle, he stood there, calm, composed, like just another customer. But his eyes met mine, and in that instant I knew. He knew I knew. A slow smirk curled on his lips before he turned away, walking toward the exit. I couldn't breathe. My body screamed at me to run, to leave everything behind, but my feet stayed planted on the cold tile floor. The moment was over in seconds, but the message was clear. I'm still watching you. I packed my bags that night. I couldn't stay. Not here, not anymore. I had convinced myself that keeping quiet had been the safest choice. But I had never been safe. He would always know. As the bus pulled away from the station, I exhaled for what felt like the first time in months. Maybe I could outrun this nightmare. Maybe I could forget. But then, just as the city lights began to fade in the distance, I glanced out the window, and my blood ran cold. There, standing at the bus stop, was him, watching, waiting, the smirk still on his lips. The road stretched ahead of me, endless and uncertain. But I knew the truth now. You can't outrun your secrets. They always find you.